Hello, friends. We spoke about maths and science the last time, but then we dealt with maths again. Once again, we're talking about just the fundamental principles because in these few minutes and these clips, we cannot deal with the entire details. But then we spoke of maths, but we could not cover science as much, even though mathematics does form a great part of science in any case. But then let's continue on that same thing and just understand the differences between the two civilizations that is part of us, the modern and the Indic. In this context, again, I will go back to my previous clip where we found that with regards to mathematics or arithmetic, it's no more the domain of just a few specialists, which it has become today in the modern world. Mathematics and arithmetic is something that most commonly people would understand and would take to it easily. And we find this difference because in today's world we see that there are a lot of people who generally, they even jokes about being averse to mathematics and arithmetic making you cry and all that. So obviously, somewhere the teaching principles have gone wrong, which have made us, not as accepting and loving of arithmetic in the child's mind as would normally should have been possible. And I think the same thing goes on for science too. And in this context, I would like to just narrate a story to you, which goes back about 130 years or so. There was a Scotsman who was supposed to have been hacked to death by an Afghan, and a British Army lieutenant by the name of Hamilton Bower was tasked the job of tracking this Afghan. The Afghan went through Tibet and went further north, so almost like a spy thriller, this British officer also chases him, and somewhere around the border of Western China and Turkestan, when this guy had set up camp somewhere there in a flea market, he came across an antique document which seemed to have some very exotic script on it, which was essentially the Brahmi script. And then he bought those documents, and since then these documents have been called the Bower documents, Bower, Bower documents. And these were then brought back, and he sent it to the Royal Society of Bengal, and there it was studied. And there were other experts who worked on interpreting it, etc. And then they found that this was a medical book which had references to various other medical journals, and it had a lot of medical stuff in it, including alluding to some of the pioneers in it, like Sushruta, etc., and some of the surgical practices that were followed. Now, this was 130 years ago. And in this book, again, you come across something what we call as rhinoplasty, which is essentially a very easy technique where a disfigured nose is repaired using plastic surgery, wherein they cut a part of your forehead skin, and then they just flap it over on the nose, suck it in, and then leave it that way. And this has been a common practice in India. Even before this was reported or this was found in the journal, it was reported by British people who are interested in these kind of things, wherein they mentioned that it was quite commonly done by certain families which who happened to be belonging to the potters caste. The potters, kumhars, they are the ones, and they perform it, and the operations are always successful. This got them astounded, and they tried to copy it, and the same thing is now being is still being followed. This is how we have found this thing very so commonly used. Imagine, because they were reporting this happening in places like Pune and certain other parts of the country, where they found this kind of a practice going on very commonly. Now that's very surprising that this was, again, once you see, medicine has not been kept isolated to just a few Brahmins or some very specialized people. It is something that has become to the common man. So there's methodologies and practices that have become so commonly used that you don't have to. I mean, you will, even in Mehergarh, which is 7000 BC, they have found some very dental practices amongst the skeletons that they found there, which again goes to show that this is something very commonly done, and you will appreciate it if you understand today how much it costs to go to a dentist. So you will find this way, science, whether it is medicine or any of these things, becoming much more common. Like we talked about law, same thing about mathematics, and we found that the common man is much more accomplished in these things when it comes to the Indic civilization as compared to the modern civilization. So there's something fundamentally different between the two that we need to understand. The other thing I would go on is for medicine is to say, if whether you people heard or not, I would like to talk here about the English bond. We're not talking of the English James Bond here, but it's called the English Bond, and it's used very avidly in civil engineering. It's essentially the methodology or the method of putting bricks in a particular formation, which makes it strongest, and that formation is called the English bond because the English found it in Mohenjo-daro, and then they found this kind of a copy. It's a particular way in which the bricks are laid, and today this English bond is used in all kinds of constructions, especially in foundations, all etc., which require to be very strong. And the beauty is that this was discovered, it's the oldest one discovered in the world of this formation is in Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, and the entire Indus Saraswati civilization. That is, once again, you will find it is not just some common, very specialized buildings or something like that. It's commonly practiced across the civilization. All houses, all places, all constructions have been in that kind of a pattern. Standardized bricks in that same pattern and the same kind of a designs across multiple cities of the civilization. So once again, this common dispersal of knowledge is what comes across here. I would then allude to another thing that in if you want to look at today's child, if you ask them anything about the stars, or if you tell them to just understand the curvature of the earth, or calculate the circumference of the earth, doing some practical experiments or anything like that, they will be unable to. If, let's say, a modern scholar was trapped in a cave for a number of days, not knowing day and night, and then when he comes out, he will not be able to identify or be able to say how many days he was in and what is that particular date. But an Indic scholar should be able to. You know why? Because in that civilization, they did not factor in only the sun, they also factored in the moon and the stars in their daily lives. Now, in today's world, the moon is just a beautiful bulb in the sky. Beyond that, we do not know anything. And I think regarding the stars, I think after Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, we did nothing about them. So, common astronomy and all is mostly unknown. But in the olden times, those who were Indic scholars should have known very easily. Why? Because their whole dating system was based upon the sun and the moon and the stars. For example, if he came out in the night sky and if he saw from in which constellation the moon rose that evening, he would know the day of the week of the month, especially whether it's a waning moon or a waxing moon. And then if he waited for the new moon or the full moon and found out which constellation it rose in, he would also know the month in which he is trapped on this island. So, or to be able this, like I was mentioning about the fact that calculus has become so difficult today, while it should have been so simple. So once again, it is the Indic scholar who understands these things and would have been able to easily calculate the distance when there's a curvature involved. You see the curvature of the earth. Now that led to a huge issue when it was Columbus and Vasco da Gama's time, but we will talk about that in another episode. Till then, let us just suffice to understand that when we see these common practices of rhinoplasty or the English bond in construction, or understanding the day of the month just from your calendar system, is something that we are completely missing in today's modern world. And can you imagine? We would think that the sun, of course, because the earth goes around it, is got the maximum gravity, but then the gravitational pull is more actually from the moon, which is closer to us, and that is why we get high tides with the rise of the moon, but not with the sunrise. And that is why the moon plays an important role in our weather patterns and our systems. And that's why the moon needed to be factored into your dating system. But today, there's no such thing. So I would leave it there, friends, and we will talk more about these kind of comparisons in the next episode. Till then, have a great time. Cheers. Bye-bye.